Hello, this is Sheepishly from Sheepishly made in MCS Livestock, and this is the American Goldfinch wool painting tutorial. It's the bird of the month for August 2022. So these are the colors we'll be using today: green, yellow, black, and red. Make sure if you haven't done wet felting before that you watch the How to Wet Felt video, as I will not be going through the wet felting process step by step today. But I will be showing you how to lay out this wool painting. So with the other wool paintings that are wet felted that we start with on my channel, we'll be laying out thin pieces of roving. So I pull out small bits of roving, and to start off we'll be laying these out going up and down. So we do alternating layers, going different directions with the wool fibers. So now we're starting on layer 2, going left to right. And these are just thin layers of roving, just a little bit at a time. And that's why we do layers. And then for layer 3, I'll be making the bird feeder here, which is the black part. And then the red part is the bottom of the bird feeder. So the layer 3, the fibers are going up and down again. And then for the bird itself, we'll be just starting off with a little bit of yellow wool. Just use real small pieces, and we're going to make the basic shape of the goldfinch here to start out. And then we'll lay the fabric mesh over top of it and start wetting it down. Like I said, I'm not showing and explaining all the steps of my wet felting process in this video, but if you'd like to learn more about it, you can watch the How to Wet Felt, which is linked in the description below. So I start off by wetting my piece down and then slowly start agitating it. I speed the video up here just for time watching purposes. Or you'll be watching 20 minutes of this process right here. So I felt it by hand a little bit first, and then I use a foam roller to roll it up. Now, there's many different ways that you can felt for wet felting. I use a foam roller. And this gets rolled about 400 times in a certain way. And then after I'm done with my rolling process for wet felting, then I go and felt it a little bit more with my hands. And then we do the fulling process, which is actually the process of setting the wet felting, and it shrinks the wool actually. So again, I'm felting by hand. And usually I rinse out between felting and fulling because I have a little bit too much soap. And then I full it first, not felt, F-U-L-L, full, with my little cardboard roller. You can also full by throwing the piece down on your table repeatedly. And then after I full with my cardboard tube, then I roll it on itself as well. So as we're getting closer to finishing the wet felting part of this video, just wanted to let you know that I lost the first half of my footage of this wet felting part, and I had to redo it. So if you see from part 1 to part 2 of this video to the needle felting part, if it looks slightly different, that's why, because I redid the wet felting portion instead of redoing the entire project. But you get the same basic idea. Okay, so for needle felting, and you have your template to work with as well if you're using my kit. If you don't have my kit, you can also find the kit for this on my Etsy shop. But the kit has a template and gives you a better idea of the shape of your bird. So when you're laying it out, you can lay it out a little bit more specifically to the shape. And then for the needle felting process here, so I'm using my multi-needle tools a lot. These are great tools and they are fairly inexpensive. They're usually under $10 and they hold like 3 to 7 needles depending. So I'm starting out with the bird feeder here. I laid a little bit more black over top of what I had already wet felted. And then I'm balling up little tiny pieces of yellow to show as seed in my bird feeder. So you can add more than I did. I just added a few here and there to show like it's little pieces of corn and seeds that you generally see in these types of bird feeders. I used the overall black on this bird feeder because I was picturing the little clear feeders that you fill with the black type of seed for the most part. So I'm just adding a little bit of detail with those little pieces of yellow and the white that I balled up and felted on. And then I took a little bit of yellow and pulled into real thin pieces just to lay over top to give it a little bit more of that yellowish look. Now at the bottom here, I'm adding a little foot stool here for the bird. So you can use black. I used gray on here, but you can also use black. And then I added a little bit more red to the bottom of our bird feeder here to make it stand out. And if you don't have a multi-needle tool, it just takes a little bit longer when you're felting. You just have to felt it a little bit more. So moving on to the actual details on the bird. So I'm adding the black part of the wing. So if you're using my template, you'll see this wing drawn out separately on the template. But I'm adding black for this wing. And then we'll start adding more details to the bird. Now I'm blending a little bit of white and yellow together. And I blend by laying the fibers on top of each other and then pulling apart at each end until they are blended. So the goldfinches, from under their belly, they are yellow on the belly, and then it goes into a little bit of a whitish yellow towards the base of their tail, and then it ends up as black on the rest of the tail. And now we're going to felt the little legs of the bird. So I used a tannish color here to do the legs of the bird. And this first leg is the one that you can see on this side of the body. And then I felted their little toes, as you would call them, wrapping around the little the little stand here where they stand on the bird feeder. And I picked the goldfinch for this month because I always remember watching these in my grandma's backyard on her bird feeders and flying around the yard. I always remember the goldfinches. So now I'm adding a little bit of a goldish color to the belly to make it look a little bit more shadowed and darker. And now we're going to add some detail to the wing. So what you don't see is that there's individual feathers on these wings. So to make the illusion of that, what we do is usually take little small circles of wool, as you see I'm doing here, and put them right next to each other, because that's actually like a stripe on each feather. But when they're all closed up, it looks like one line across this wing. And then they have a little bit more white on the top of the wing as well. And sometimes have a little bit of white lines down the wing, just a little bit. And then we're going to work on the tail here, adding more black. And now we're going to work on the head here. So I needed to add more wool to the head. It wasn't quite shaped enough. I like to leave most of the detail work on these pieces to needle felting instead of wet felting. Wet felting, it can move a little bit when you're felting it, so it's harder to keep as good of detail. And then on the top of the head, these finches have a small black band that goes across the top of their head. Sorry if the video is a little bit blurry. I guess my camera wasn't in very good focus that day. But now I'm adding the black for the eyes, so it's just a small circle in between, right underneath the black stripe on the top of their head. Adding a small black circle, and we will be adding a little bit of white to the eye. This helps give it a more lifelike look. I do this in every animal that I make. Usually a larger white dot and a smaller white one kind of next to it. And then I'm taking more of the tan color that I used for the legs, and I'm making the beak. So they kind of have a short, wide beak. And it kind of comes off right off the top of the head and goes right down into the beak. And then I added a little bit of black here to distinguish the top and bottom beak. Just a little bitty black line through that beak there. And then with some of the goldish color and yellow color blended together, I added a little bit darker color kind of below the beak area. And you can see some more of the gold, the darker yellow. I'm adding to the belly. And that's for shading purposes. And a little bit on the back of the neck. And we are just about finished up here with our pretty little bird. So I thank you for watching today. And if you like these videos, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Bird of the Month videos and more felting videos. So we'll see you next time. Happy felting!